they're redacting the names of people who are not victims at all to protect them. And that is completely in contrast to what we said. They're redacting entire pages of documents, and that gives us no context as to what they're redacting, and again, violates the law that we put forward. So, their excuses break down. There's no excuse for what they've done so far. I still don't know what the president is trying to do, who he's trying to protect. Is it himself? Is it people who are close to him? In any case, he continues to try to evade the transparency that the public demands.
Now, let's pick up on that story of the release of hundreds and thousands of documents from the Epstein files by the US Department of Justice. I'm now delighted to be joined by Congressman Suhas Subramanyam, who is the Democrat representative for Virginia's 10th Congressional District. He's also a member of the US Congress's House Oversight Committee, and they have been investigating the Epstein files. Suhas, welcome to the show. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, you and your colleagues have been, and we've spoken before, you've been pushing hard for this release. What's your reaction?
They basically broke the law because the law that was passed in the House and the Senate and signed into law by President Trump himself said that they needed to release all of the files by December 19th. And the problem is that they only released part of the files. Just going through the files, I haven't been through all of them, but about half of them, maybe more, are public information or things we already had. And the other half are basically things that are heavily redacted. And part of the law said that you needed to explain your redactions too, and not redact people for political reasons or to cover up for certain people who may have perpetrated crimes or been closely associated in covering up the crimes. And so, they broke the law on a number of fronts, and we're going to have to look at what legal action we can take. But we plan to take some form of legal action in the coming days because of that.
And what sort of options are available to you?
I've seen some colleagues say publicly they want to impeach the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, because she had promised back in March that she had the files on her desk ready to release. And so she must have been lying if she said that. But in any case, she clearly didn't release them. But now it's the law for her to release them. And it's the law for the Department of Justice to release everything they have in the FBI and any other agency. And so by basically breaking the law, they were already breaking a subpoena that we had issued to them 4 months ago, requiring them to release the files to us on the Oversight Committee. And they did one release, and 97% of those documents were public. And then they did nothing else after that. And so this is the second time now that they have disobeyed a rule or law promulgated by Congress. And, so that's one option. And there's other options too. Maybe we need to go to court. I don't know who has standing to do that. But certainly we need to explore every single legal option on the table.
Have they indicated to you why they have just done a very small amount of the releasing? Have they indicated to you that they will release the rest of it, maybe in increments? Would that satisfy you?
No, it wouldn't satisfy me because they're supposed to release all of the files. And, their excuse is that they released one batch of files by the deadline because there's just so many files to go through and redact in this effort to protect victims. I absolutely, understand that. I'm on the Oversight Committee. We're having this sort of, project of redacting the files that we receive from other sources like Epstein's estate. And it's a very sensitive topic. We're working hand in hand with the victims, and it's not easy. I'll say that. But that excuse breaks down when you realize that they've been saying since March that they were going to release these files and they were ready to release and that they were already redacted. And they've been saying since January that they have the files in the first place. And they've been saying since before the president got elected, president and his team have been saying that the second that they get their hands on the files, they will release them and all the names will come forward. The other thing is they're redacting the names of people who are not victims at all to protect them. And that is completely in contrast to what we said. They're redacting entire pages of documents, and that gives us no context as to what they're redacting, and again violates the law that we put forward. So, their excuses break down. There's no excuse for what they've done so far. I still don't know what the president is trying to do, who he's trying to protect. Is it himself? Is it people who are close to him? In any case, he continues to try to evade the transparency that the public demands.
And as you mentioned, your colleague who co-authored the bill says he's drafting these articles of impeachment against the Attorney General, Pam Bondi. Is there an appetite for that? Is that something that you would support? Do you think that impeachment could happen?
Well, there's certainly grounds for impeachment. I'll say that for impeachment to happen, we need at least four Republicans to support it. I do think we could possibly get Thomas Massie, who has sort of been the other person. He's a Republican. He's been leading the charge on their side for trying to get transparency around the Epstein files. But some of the other folks, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, for instance, is retiring as of January 5th. She's had it with politics in this administration, turning their backs on even their own base. But I'm not quite sure who else would join us. But if we could find enough Republicans to join us in that effort, it's certainly a worthwhile effort.
And which, of course, may well be tricky to do, but so we'll have to see what happens with that. Now, when you and I last spoke, Suhas, you were very clear that this investigation needs to look without fear or favour across different parties. Now, Bill Clinton, of course, prominent Democrat, former US president, features quite prominently in the latest release. Some pretty embarrassing pictures of him. What do you think's going on there?
Yeah, it's pretty clear that he had some form of a friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. We don't know exactly when, but we were planning to have him come to our committee this week, and unfortunately, we had to reschedule. And so he's going to come before a committee in January and answer questions. And so we have questions for him, certainly. What's interesting, though, is the president's chief of staff did an interview, a very revealing interview that she, I think, regrets now with
This is the
Vanity Fair.
Vanity Fair, yeah.
That's right. And in it, she says that, President Trump keeps saying that Bill Clinton, committed wrongdoings here, and that's simply not true. The president is not being truthful about that. And so, I think what they're trying to do is make this a partisan issue as a way of sort of regaining the trust of their own base, who is not trusting the president and his administration on this issue. But from my perspective as a Democrat, if there were Democrats out there doing the wrong thing, they should be held accountable as well. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican; it doesn't matter. And so, certainly, I think Bill Clinton, again, says he's done nothing wrong, and even the president's staff, who has seen the files, to say they do nothing wrong. The other thing that Susan Wiles said about that about the files was that the President Trump appears in them. He appears in them regularly, and so I think part of this is if you search the files that were released on Friday, not once does Trump show up, and in every other production that we found through the estate and through other means, the president keeps showing up as a very close friend and confidant of Jeffrey Epstein. So,
although she also, as well, maintains that he has, had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, but has done no wrongdoing in relation to his. And look, do you feel you guys are getting played, and that even though they've released this big amount of information, that's it now, they're not going to release any more, or do you think they're just playing you?
Oh, yeah, I think they're playing games, certainly. I think what they're trying to do is release files that'll be embarrassing to political opponents and embarrassing to other people that they don't particularly care for. And that will protect President Trump and his friends and people he wants to protect. And then, I think the hope is that the story goes away. But the problem is the story is not going away. And this was never about President Trump. It was never supposed to be political, but he made it about himself by not being transparent with the American people. And he made himself the story by continuing to defy Congress, break the law on several occasions now, and not release the files. The files I really want most are the Department of Justice put together more than 60 count indictment of Jeffrey Epstein. And the staff had an 80-page memo to justify the indictment of all these charges against Jeffrey Epstein. And then the higher ups in the justice system sort of put a squash to that entire sort of indictment and those charges and gave him a sweetheart deal. I'd love to see what they were going to charge him with and the justifications for those things. And that should be part of the files. And it would have been very easy to put it in this first batch. It's less than 150 pages. It's easy to read. You don't really need to redact much except for victims' names. But yeah, we don't even get that level of transparency from the administration. That's a big problem.
I just want to finish off with just a question that one of our listeners has messaged into us saying, do you, as a congressman looking at this, do you think there needs to be a re-examination in terms of how Jeffrey Epstein died?
Everything that I've been told and all the evidence that I've been presented was that, Jeffrey Epstein did kill himself and that he was somehow able to get his hands on extra bed sheets, even though that was unsanctioned, and find a spot that didn't have proper cameras and was able to, take his own life. That's all the evidence that I've seen, and that's what it indicates. It's certainly possible that, the people who kind of continue to say that are wrong. But crazier things have happened than, a suspicious death of someone who has a lot of information about a lot of powerful people. Certainly, that seems to be why people continue thinking about that and talking about that.
Well, look, Congressman, thank you very much for your time and have a very Merry Christmas.
You as well. Take care.
That was Congressman Suhas Subramanyam, who was part of the Oversight Committee, which has been investigating these Epstein files. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens next in terms of whether the Department of Justice will release further information, because just a fraction of all of those documents, even though there's so many of them, only a fraction has been released. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with that.